In this video, I'd like to share another of my favorite tools with you. It's something that I use for creating resist to protect areas of the underpainting while I apply paint on top. So I'm going to be demoing this with the subject matter of misty islands. Um, this is the kind of landscape that is characteristic of the west coast of BC. We're starting with the canvas that I prepared in my last video with the paint roller. So my favorite tool that I'd like to share with you today is Pebeo Drawing Gum. This is a resist. It's my favorite resist. It goes on very smoothly and in a very thin kind of liquid layer, and it's easy to lift. So I'm going to be placing some drawing gum down on the canvas and then letting it dry and then applying paint to that area and then doing some lifting to show you how it works. You can see I've done a little bit of drawing, light drawing with chalk to kind of map out where I'll start creating the islands. I've also measured off with my ruler here the horizon. So this line here is 7 inches from the top for this particular island that I'm working on. And there's the horizon, which I'm actually going to protect with a piece of painter's tape. Another favorite material is my Duramax tape that I get at the dollar store. It's really, really great. It doesn't lift when you don't want it to lift, and once you're ready for it to lift, it doesn't strip a lot of stuff away underneath. So it's sticky, but not too sticky. And as I work through this painting, I'll be building other layers of islands on different horizons. I've got some cheap brushes because this stuff is really hard on your brushes. It's like liquid rubber. As soon as it dries, it's on the brush forever. So I'm going to just use some old beaten up brushes. I've got a few different flats and these 2 rounds. And what I'm going to do is put the drawing gum down to create the shape of the island. So let's start with the flat. We don't need a really thick layer. So here's the base of what will be an island. And I'm getting that into water as soon as I'm finished using it. Now I'll start to create more of the shape of the treetops. So I'm just using this bigger round to kind of get a little bit of the jaggedy silhouette of the treetops. And I'll move to a smaller round to get a little bit more detail in those treetops. A little bit of a finer kind of profile. I've traveled a lot in this environment, so I kind of know by heart what these silhouettes look like. But of course it's always good, if you don't, to have a study photograph or more than one handy. So they have a kind of almost a calligraphic kind of look, these treetops. And if you can already imagine how this is going to work, because I laid down some paint on the sky, the forms of the treetops are going to be, and the island are going to be created by when we strip away the the masking fluid, because whatever is underneath the masking fluid remains protected. So let's let this dry and then we'll move on to the next step. So the next thing that I want to do is apply some paint to create a sky and paint this back. I've created another horizon here. I've dropped down the horizon for another island sitting on these plains of water. Remember that things sit on plains in water just like they sit in plains on a terrestrial landscape. So everything that's in a seascape or a waterscape is actually situated on a plane of water. You can think of water as a series of horizontal planes. So this is going to be a larger island sitting on this plane, and here's the one that I did demo on applying the masking fluid to. The masking fluid is a very thin sticky layer, and I'm going to create just a pale white mix with a little bit of unbleached titanium and titanium white. I'm going to put it on my parchment palette and use my roller again to apply it. So in this step, what I did was I took my roller covered in paint. I'm putting on my second coat right now. And I sprayed lightly and let it run down, and then made sure it didn't run past these masking tape areas. So I just used a bit of paper towel, and now I'm just putting on a second layer just because I think it got a little bit thinned out in places. So the trick with that step is just to make sure that you control where the paint goes, because we're adding water to we're thinning down the acrylic paint and it's running down. I just mopped it up gently along here, trying to not to rub too much. I actually took off a couple of pieces of drawing gum here, so you have to be really careful with the under layer. Now I'm going to dry this, and then we'll see what happens when we lift up the drawing gum. This has to be really, really dry before you start to lift it. Now there's a couple of different ways you can lift it. You can just lift it with your fingers. I actually really like to do that because it makes sure that I can feel what's underneath and I don't miss any. Or there's a little kind of a crepe eraser that you can buy for this purpose in the art store. It looks like this. So remember that everything that had drawing gum on it will be protected. And we're going to go, I will eventually go in and work into these layers with more layers of paint. But for now, they've been protected from this layer that we created with the paint over drawing gum to create this kind of misty sky. So all this stuff that flowed down here won't show up in the final painting because it's been protected by the drawing gum. And in a couple of places, this is where I rubbed away some drawing gum by accident, but that's okay, not a big deal. And you can see the richness of those layers that we built up. You can see in my last video on using the roller, my favorite tool, the roller, how those are now starting to read as kind of complex colors in the landscape. And these layers down here are still kind of reading as part of this landscape, but eventually they'll be painted over with more opaque layers to become water. So that is what I do with one of my favorite tools, Pebeo Drawing Gum.